You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Right now, there is a very strange narrative that has emerged on the media side of things. Now, I want to be clear right off the top of the bat. When I say media narrative, I mean whether it is a narrative on the right or the left, you see a lot of accounts that are either political figures or influencers or media anchors, journalists, whatever you want to call them, that start posting the exact same phrases over and over. Usually it follows a particularly spicy news story, or it is a response on the other side of the aisle to a completely different story. So most recently, there has been a video making its way around not just the political parts of the internet, but around the entire social media sphere globally, of a group of protesters, trespassers, rioters, agitators that went into a Minneapolis church, city's church, and harassed the members of the congregation, harassed the pastor, including former journalist Don Lemon, and then also terrorized children, making them cry and then yelling at the children more when they were crying on their parents' laps. And this led to the Vice President of the United States announcing when he was in Minneapolis today that a priority for the administration would be keeping children safe because the Department of Justice was at work over the 3-day weekend. Here was the Vice President.
Right now we're focused on Minneapolis because that's where we have the highest concentration of people who have violated our immigration laws, and that's also, frankly, where we see the most assault of our law enforcement officers. I mean, our plan is very simple. If you assault a federal law enforcement officer, we're going to do everything that we can to put you in prison. It's very simple. And most of these protesters, as much as I may disagree with their politics, most of them have been peaceful, but a lot of them have not been peaceful. And if you go and storm a church, if you go and insult a federal law enforcement officer, we're going to try very hard. We're going to use every resource of the federal government to put you in prison. Respect people's rights. Respect people's rights to worship. Respect people's rights to do their job without being assaulted. If you follow that basic principle, the Trump administration is going to do everything that we can to protect your rights. But if you go after somebody, if you assault somebody, if you make a 9-year-old girl cry because you walked into her church and harassed her, we're going to go after you with every single tool that we have.
Now, this became a rather big problem for those over on the left side of the aisle because up until this point, there are those on the left side of the aisle, and we'll get into this here in a second, Hakeem Jeffries specifically, who had made quite a bit of hay over ICE being really, really bad and awful. And they had played all of these clips of ICE doing just, oh man, they're arresting American citizens, a word that they weren't going to use, up until they had the opportunity to say they're arresting American citizens who were obstructing federal law enforcement. And then, with this show of harassment, clearly not the peaceful protests that Tim Walz had suggested were everywhere, but actual violent interaction, law-breaking interaction at City's Church, suddenly the narrative started to shift and it was looking a little ugly. Well, no worries, ladies and gentlemen, because then the question came up about children and perhaps mistakes in law enforcement. Like, what if there's a picture or a video of an individual clearly restrained, and then an ICE agent gets up right in their face and pepper sprays them from 6 inches away? That would be an instance in which law enforcement made a mistake, correct? Here was the vice president responding to that.
President Trump this week said that ICE has made some mistakes. I'm curious what steps the administration is taking to rectify those, and do you think your presence in Minneapolis today will calm the tensions there?
Well, certainly one of my goals is to calm the tensions, to talk to people, to try to understand what we can do better. You know, when the president says that that mistakes have been made, you know, my thought on that is that, well, of course there have been mistakes made, because you're always going to have mistakes made in law enforcement. I mean, we all know this. Probably every single person in this room knows a police officer. 99% of our police officers, probably more than that, are doing everything right. Some people are going to make mistakes. That's the nature of law enforcement. But the number one way where we could lower the mistakes that are happening, at least with our immigration enforcement, is to have local jurisdictions that are cooperating with us.
Now, this is a very important thing that has become a rather big debate on the political sphere. And the reason it's become a big debate is because states like Florida and Texas have cooperated with federal law enforcement like a lot of red states, and there haven't been huge mass protests or any really ugly incidents. But when you get to the blue states, and no cooperation whatsoever, instead you have local, city, and then congressional state officials as well out there inflaming fears in the community and telling people they need to fight back and they need to run and stay indoors and hide. You get really, really ugly events that come out of it. And that leads us to the narrative that has emerged that everyone right now on the internet is talking about. This comes from a story from the Washington Post in which they say ICE detains 4 children from a Minnesota school district, including a 5-year-old. Columbia Heights Public School District officials accused ICE officers of using the 5-year-old as bait. And a 10-year-old and her mother were also detained. And so immediately you had all over the internet, even up until the show, I think like 20 minutes ago, Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, formerly almost the president of the United States, had tweeted out a picture of the 5-year-old, said, Liam Ramos is just a baby. He should be at home with his family, not used as bait by ICE and held in a Texas detention center. I am outraged, and you should be too. Quick, somebody get the pearls. All right, we got the pearls. We're ready for this story. So if you read the Washington Post article, you find out a little something. You find out that the father, who is an illegal immigrant, fled from law enforcement on foot and left his child behind when ICE officers approached him. So this individual who was with his son abandoned his child, booked it, left his 5-year-old child in the cold in order to escape from police. Wonderful guy, right? Abandoning your children, just out there or out for a walk, doing things with your kids, and then bolting, leaving your child alone because you don't want to get arrested or spoken to, talked to. That's a little bit different than the narrative. Again, that didn't stop individuals from running out, making the claim that, we are in full scale, end of the republic stuff here, ladies and gentlemen. Representative Andy Craig of Minnesota just got out and just lied blatantly about the story.
So now ICE is using a 5-year-old boy. A 5-year-old boy. They took him and used him to lure his father out. And now they've detained them both. The family doesn't know where they are. This is the worst of the damn worst. This is not humanity in Minnesota, folks. If you can look at this 5-year-old and actually with a straight face still support and be silent in the face of what the Trump administration and Kristi Noem is doing, I just can't even believe this is America.
If you can do this, I can't believe you. Really what the feds should have done is just left the 5-year-old out in the snow to freeze. Again, I don't know if you're quite aware of this at the moment, but the temperatures in the Twin Cities area, not exactly balmy, wonderful weather. Not something that I would go out and put on a little sunscreen and, chill in the summer fun with. Those federal jerks, I can't believe it. Just keeping children from freezing to death after their parents abandoned them. That's terrible. Quick, somebody get my pitchfork. Someone get the torch. We need to burn down a sporting goods store immediately. So they've run with this all over the media today. And by the way, just all over and then some. So in the active social media sphere, again, we had individuals all over, like this Washington Post story, taken Ilhan Omar. ICE just detained a 5-year-old child. Don't tell us that this is the worst of the worst. That's a lie. Absolutely vile. The Democrats account themselves. ICE arrested a 5-year-old coming home from preschool and then tried to use him as human bait. By human bait, by the way, what they mean is that there was the dad walking with the kid. And then ICE was like, excuse me, you're an illegal immigrant. And the father left his child with federal officials and just booked it away from the kid. And then ICE kept the child because abandoned child, neglect, other things, and then said, no, we're not giving him back. His father is, again, a fugitive from justice. That's not exactly an environment you turn over children to. Absolutely not. And then the policy of the administration is, yes, keeping children with their parents. I thought that separating children from their parents was a bad thing. Why all of a sudden is there, again, all of this pearl clutching? Well, we're going to get into a little more of this because, unfortunately, it gets a little bit uglier. Radio crew, we have to send you over to the commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett cast on the Daily Signal. Now, on the live stream, we don't send you guys over to commercial, at least not very often. So the Department of Homeland Security did respond to this. They said ICE did not target a child. The child was abandoned. On January 20th, ICE conducted a targeted operation to arrest Adrian Alexandro Conejo Arias, an illegal alien from Ecuador who was released into the United States by the Biden administration. As agents approached the driver, Adrian fled on foot, abandoning his child. For the child's safety, one of our ICE officers remained with the child, while other officers apprehended Arias. And again, parents are asked when the child is, parents are asked if they were illegals. When the family is detained, do the parents want the child to be with them, or do they want to leave the child in the United States to become a ward of the state? And the family rejected the family rejects the idea of leaving their kid here, and then they take the self-deportation option and they're flown out of the country together. Now, those are just the facts of the situation. But by making hay and having all of these accounts, and I really do mean all over the wide interwebs, and not just that stories like from Ro Khanna, which we'll get to in a second, individuals are making the case that ICE is now going after children. This is the one unifying thing that is being wrung out across the interwebs. You have even people like Rand Paul who are falling for this, going on Joe Rogan to say that he's seen videos of people standing in elevators, like Captain America standing in the elevator with women and children. All of a sudden, ICE just starts beating the crap out of all of these women and children and deporting them and capturing them. It's like the Gestapo.
It's a little harder to make the argument, and I saw this image in a courthouse in Chicago where it's a big elevator and the ICE agents all have masks on and they're arresting people, and it's all women and children in a big elevator in a courthouse. It's like, really? I don't think you really need to be wearing a mask.
Well, they're worried about.
I love that so much. I do. So Rand Paul, even the libertarians are like, how could you just enforce the law like that? I do appreciate when the common criticism made to, again, people like libertarians is you guys believe in open borders. They're like no actual defined border to the United States. They say, no, we believe in the rule of law and that you shouldn't break the law and social contract and all this stuff. And then it just so happens that no, they don't. They do not believe in the rule of law. Many of these libertarian goofballs, and Thomas Massie being one of them from Kentucky, was the sole Republican who voted with Democrats, not all Democrats today. 7 Democrats joined Republicans, 212 of them, in voting yes in favor of federal funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Thomas Massie voted against it. He was the sole Republican to vote against it. And this goofball idea that you can just run with this idea of federal law enforcement are all unilaterally terrible, they're evil, they're participating in all this terror, and do this George Floyd routine is not going to go well in the long term. Representative Eric Swalwell, California, who is running for governor, has made it a policy of his that if you have been a part of immigration customs enforcement, you won't be able to be hired for a job in California. Here you go.
As governor, I'll use my emergency powers and I'll tell every state agency, we are not, as a policy, hiring ICE agents. Because right now, these guys doing this work, it's a decision. No one's holding a gun and saying you have to work for ICE. And so when I'm governor, if you're still working for ICE and you haven't got the message that no one's asking you to do this, you won't be hired in the state. And it's part of an approach that says...
So that's, by the way, wild. That is beyond wild. He's like, I'm going to use my emergency power as governor of California to forbid anyone who worked for ICE to be hired in the state of California. You want to talk about some genuine fascism? That is a perfect example. He's going to force public and private businesses not to hire individuals who work for immigration customs enforcement. Now, that's quite a move. That's quite a decision. Now, we got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the other claims that are being made here, some of the updates, because they do have a lot to do with the arrest narrative out of Minneapolis now being played, some other news as well. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, where the prevailing narrative of the day, in other words, the news cycle that you're about to experience for the next week, is this idea that ICE is going around picking up children and murdering the kindest, sweetest people that you've ever seen. Ro Khanna of California is trying this line. Said a man was choked so hard that his blood vessels burst in his eyelids and his death was ruled a homicide. ICE, this is a rogue agency. It needs to be torn down and replaced with a new federal agency, because that always goes well, that respects human and constitutional rights and has civil rights oversight. It already does and has all of those things, by the way. Here's the thing, by the way. This particular individual that he is crying about and weeping over, I'll be glad to share you Geraldo Lunas Campos, the homicide supposedly that ICE committed here. This is a guy whose rap sheet includes raping an 11-year-old child in 2003, not to mention all kinds of larceny, DUIs, sales of controlled substances, criminal possessions as a weapon, etc. So I'm just going to level with you. I'm not crying for the death of a child rapist. I'm not. Additional information shows, again, that the individual, to the last, fought federal agents. Okay, when you resist arrest, when you fight law enforcement, whether it is a judicial or an administrative warrant, and we're going to get to that in a second, when you continue to fight, you put your own life at risk. That's the way, this idea that people seem to have in traffic stops or in the carrying out of arrest warrants, in which the officer tells them to do something and the person says no. And then they continue to say no and yell and say, you can't touch me, you can't do this, as though that suddenly yelling one more time is going to make suddenly things better and it's going to be wonderful sunshine and roses. Guys, it turns out that's not how anything works at all. Just a pro tip from me to you. You are not given the right to obstruct federal law enforcement or to resist arrest under a lawful warrant. Now let's get to the conversation about warrants, because right now you have the entire left. Well, there are some people on the left who are going a little crazier than others. For example, Representative Maxwell Frost, who Bernie Sanders introduced to the crowd as the future of the Democratic Party. You remember Bernie Sanders was going around the country speaking with AOC and talking about the importance of socialism and the oligarchy while he was flying around on his big, beautiful jet. Well, Maxwell Frost was like the protege, the slightly less Latina superstar protege. Maxwell Frost is now claiming that the Trump administration and ICE are carrying out an ethnic cleansing. My God.
We know that this administration has been using immigration enforcement to essentially conduct an ethnic cleansing in the United States of America.
How do you essentially conduct an ethnic cleansing? That's kind of like a pretty serious dividing line, right? As the difference between, he was like metaphorically murdered. Like, what does that mean? Essentially carried out an ethnic cleansing. Is he carrying out an ethnic cleansing or not? What ethnicity is being cleansed here? Because again, I seem to notice that legal immigrants, even those who are detained for obstructing law enforcement, are then released on charges in the United States. Those who are not citizens of the United States and have violated immigration law, those are being deported. An ethnic cleansing claim, though.
I've been in those detention centers all across my state. I went into Alligator Alcatraz. There's no Europeans there outstaying their visas.
There are, by the way. Since he made this public statement, 17 of the detainees currently are of European origin. I will remind you that there are quite a few illegal aliens from Portugal who are in the United States. I don't know if you know this, just a little hot take here. Portugal in Europe. Yeah, Portugal, not a country in South America there, muchacho.
It's black and brown people. It's Haitian people.
This dude's going to be like extremely shocked when he finds out that there are, in fact, tan and black, brown people, whatever that means, in Europe. Amazing. Also, he mentions Haitian people as though Haitian people are different from black or brown people. He can't make up his mind. We all know the colors of the rainbow, you know, red, yellow, orange, green, blue, black, brown, Haitian. So they're doing very well on that side of things. Hakeem Jeffries, though, minority leader in the House, he's decided to just go full on force on this and repeat the last debunked lie, which is that there are no warrants for arrest being given here. ICE is just breaking the Fourth Amendment and kicking in people's doors and just dragging people out by their Fruit of the Looms or whatever.
The American people deserve an immigration and customs enforcement agency.
For those who are listening, you're not actually watching this at the same time. I do want to point out that all of the Democrats that I've seen on media are going to the Gavin Newsom School for Hand Gestures while they give these statements. Now, Akeem struggles. Again, as I've said before, he speaks like the love child of William Shatner and Barack Obama. All of the pauses, none of the charm. And his hand gestures do that too. Like he'll do a little gesturing for a minute. He'll do the knock on the door. He'll do the rub the seal's belly. He'll do the poke the underside of the light sockets. But he'll pause a few seconds between each little gesture. And I don't know if that's because his peripheral nervous system isn't really linking up with the central nervous system. Something ain't right here, Jim, but we'll play it out anyway.
That conducts itself in a manner consistent with every other law enforcement agency in the country. That is not too much to ask in the United States of America. But ICE is totally out of control, using taxpayer dollars to brutalize American citizens and law-abiding immigrant families. So,
law-abiding immigrant families? Let's see, what kind of immigrant? Oh, the illegal ones? I don't know if you know this, Akeem. One of the definitions of illegal includes not abiding by the law. Huh?
what we will continue to press are common sense changes that should be mandated as part of the law, including but not limited to judicial warrant requirements before American citizens can be seized out of their home.
This is his big move. This is the big, huge law and order. This is the big Hakeem Jeffries move here. We're gonna require warrants. So the argument that the left is also pushing at the same time that they're saying ICE is scooping up kids at daycare centers, well, not the Somali ones because those don't have kids in them. They're making the case that there are no warrants around, that ICE is just going into houses without any kind of warrants whatsoever, and they're just walking in and they're going, is there a Juan living here? Is any Juan living here at all? And then they're just dragging people out. And no, that's not the case. So according to the Department of Homeland Security, as a reminder here, the Immigration Customs Enforcement agents have administrative warrants. Administrative warrants have been used for decades. They are recognized by the Supreme Court and every federal court in the United States. In every single case, the Department of Homeland Security is used an administrative warrant to enter a residence. An illegal alien has already had their full due process and a final order of removal by a federal immigration judge. Which means this, you've already had a federal order to get out. And if you didn't get out, you're gonna be picked up and forced to get out. Not difficult. Survey says, get out. Not difficult at all for, again, people with an IQ above lukewarm. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of some of the other nonsense from today, mainly that the hearing on Jack Smith, in which Representative Brandon Gill probably did one of the best jobs I've ever seen as far as a committee in Congress, the television spectacles that they have become. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the United States-Iran action that appears to be imminent at this point, based on some of the language from the president, as well as the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln. So we're going to send the radio crew over to commercial so I don't get slapped by the FCC, and continue on the live stream with some of those international updates. And then, of course, the Minnesota magistrate judge who is refusing to charge Don Lemon some really weird stuff in that case. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, as wild as it is to say that I need to get the international stuff out of the way because there's just that much news, I got to get some of this out of the way. So right now, the apparent action of the United States suggests that the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln, which has just arrived in the Gulf of Arabia, the Arabian Gulf, is prepping to head up into the Persian Gulf and get a little close to Iran. So the strike force is shaking some things up already. There is a U.S. destroyer, a missile craft, which is being redeployed to the eastern Mediterranean, which has been there before. Last year, it was one of the U.S. naval vessels which was assisting in protecting Israel and Lebanon from return fire and ballistic missiles shot by Iran. So it does appear that the United States is moving into the region for a pretty significant boxing match. Now, I'll get this little speculation out of the side. I don't really like the excuse for the president's actions that he's doing 40 candy cane, super duper shoots and ladders chess. In this case, I will say there is a very good chance that one of the reasons in the last week the president of the United States has been wildly bombastic about wanting Greenland probably has to do with the distraction from the United States getting ready to do a very significant action against al-Khamenei in Iran. Now, I could be very wrong. That is pure speculation. I'm just saying, I'm looking at this. I've seen Trump operate before. Seems like a very suspicious 180 in diplomatic strategy that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, didn't try to walk back for the president. So, that said, here's the president of the United States on Air Force One, now headed home from Davos in the World Economic Forum. This is audio only. Making it clear that I don't know what's going to happen, but could be big.
Where do things stand with Iran? The U.S. has got sizable military assets.
We have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction.
So again, I'm sorry about the audio quality. Something that technology has not advanced this far yet to do is fix recording on plane audio, which sucks. But the president said we have a very large flotilla heading towards Iran, and it's just in case, is the words of the president. According to the Wall Street Journal, there are administration officials who are making it clear the United States has 3 or 4 major strike options that it is preparing in a possible removal from this earth, a promotion to hell for al-Khamenei.
And we'll see what happens. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I saw 837 hangings on Thursday. They would have been dead. Every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years ago.
Now, the president of the United States also talked a little bit about how his diplomatic efforts in basically telling Iran, if you don't stop hanging people, I'm going to give you a really bad day early. This is kind of mitigated so that the president might make a couple more threats, say, hey, please stop this, and then may not do anything to Iran. I'm going to tell you right now, that's a juke. Man's faking him out. That's a bluff, but not a bluff as though he's not going to do anything. I believe that the Iranians, I don't think, are really buying it either at this point. That he's rested on the promises of al-Khamenei, mainly because as the internet is trying desperately to come back on in Iran, there are clips of technicals, that being pickup trucks with automatic weapons on them, are mowing down protesters still. That's all of that clip I'm going to play. So we're going to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. To the radio crew, I'm sorry. I don't have time to go over some of the international stuff. You have to go back to the YouTube or Rumble page, catch that part of the live stream. We need to tackle the situation regarding the arrest of Nakima Levy Armstrong and crew. Because as of just a couple of minutes before the show, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who is one of the many Minnesota officials who have now been subpoenaed by the federal government for obstructing federal law enforcement, which is something totally different than Tim Walz being federally investigated for his potential part in the major fraud rings, plural. I've said it before, now it's a definitive. There are more indictments and federal investigations happening in the state of Minnesota right now than at any point in history. And these include, during the 1920s and 30s, the federal investigations into the state of Minnesota regarding the mob. We have never had this many simultaneous federal investigations of state and local officials than right now in the state of Minnesota. That's unreal. It really is something to behold. So Jacob Fry is very, very upset that the federal Department of Justice, as well as the Department of Homeland Security, has arrested the ringleader of the lady who stormed her way into, with a crowd, the city's church in Minneapolis and terrorized, again, a bunch of children. Here was his statement this evening.
Do you want to comment on the
Yeah, so I want to comment on Nikema Levy Armstrong's arrest. It's a gross abuse of power, and she should immediately be released.
Why? Why is it a gross abuse of power? When Nick Shirley went into the lobbies or the hallways outside of the lobbies, because somewhere in those weird corporate warehouse suite complexes that aren't meant for I don't want to say residential commercial, someone who's more familiar with how zoning works in that framework, you know what I mean? There are office suite buildings that are meant for, there's a dentist office here. There's a therapist office here. There's somebody making candles over here. And then there are those large warehouse suite buildings. You know what I'm talking about? You live in Brownsburg, Indiana. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Those big, massive, sprawling structures you can rent space out in. Those are some of the daycare facilities that Nick Shirley, in the hallway of those particular large warehouse buildings, asked questions. And Fry was one of the people who was calling for Nick Shirley to be arrested for harassing people in those daycare facilities and asking questions. All of a sudden, though, you have people that are from the NAACP and BLM that are storming churches. And again, we're going to talk to Tyler O'Neill in a second. I believe he's actually signing into the room, getting online for this. These individuals who are making more than just a scene are terrifying and intimidating children that are throwing off church services in progress. And all of a sudden, that's a destructive overreach of power. Now, right before Armstrong was arrested, here she was, on CNN.
And I do want to correct something that was said in the beginning. We did not rush into that church. We actually went and sat down and participated in the service. And after the pastor prayed, that is when I stood up and asked him a question in response to his prayer. And then he responded to me. And then I proceeded to ask him about Pastor David Easterwood and how is it possible for him to serve as both the pastor and the director of ICE for Minnesota. And instead of responding to me, as soon as I said the name David Easterwood, the pastor says, "Shame, shame." And that is when I let...
Gosh, don't you hate it when you're talking to a group of people and then someone interrupts you screaming shame? The irony, someone needs to call Alanis Morissette. This is far more ironic than Rain on Your Wedding Day. The idea that someone from BLM and the NAACP, that crew, would get up on national television and say, and then he interrupted me, oh my goodness, and just started shouting shame like I've been doing for 10 years. They did not go in and just participate in the church service. How do I know that? Because we have the video of the people who went into the church and started screaming and yelling at the people in the church. And I have the volume turned down because there are a lot of really naughty and gross things that are said. Does that look like participating in the church service to you? That seems like throwing everything aside. They're not even good liars. It's so easily disproven.
Us in chance justice for Renee Good and hands up, don't shoot. So I want to clarify that. We didn't rush in. We didn't bust in. We were a part of the service until I got up and posed that question to the pastor.
Again, there is still no actual proof of any sort that this pastor is an ICE agent. It's a Reddit post. This woman is like, oh, Hillary Clinton invented AIDS. Oh my gosh, we got to mobilize right now. Like that kind of person who believes anything they see on social media. Essentially what we have is Candace Owens Light over here, who decided to raise up a little BLM protest to go assault Christians. Now, I do want to get to some of the details on the arrest, so I just want to make sure, I believe we have Tyler ready to go here. Tyler O'Neill, our senior editor, has been tracking this story today, seeking comment from the Department of Justice. Tell us what you know about those who have been arrested so far.
Yeah, so far we have at least 3 arrests. We have Nikema Armstrong, who is the leader of the entire, effort to invade this church. We also have Chantil Louisa Allen, and we also have William Kelly, who goes by DeWoke Farmer online. William Kelly is interesting because he's also an agitator out here in D.C. He's been involved in some of these protests, hounding Heritage Foundation staff as they leave and come back to the building here. So, and he's also been hounding people outside of a church in D.C. So this guy is no stranger to this sort of aggressive, in-your-face agitation. And,
oh my gosh. Hang on, wait. This is the guy that I blew a kiss to a couple of weeks ago? Are you serious? Oh my gosh. Well, that's news. I wasn't expecting that. You can blow a kiss
to him while he's in prison. So
wow, I said that I was going to drive up and smoke a cigar outside of his court when they were putting him on trial. That's another thing I want to ask you. Sorry, to get back to the on-point news here. I'll get into some of the charges that these individuals are hit with in a second. First, I want to ask you, there's been a lot of rumor flying around today about the magistrate judge who refused to sign at least some kind of charges for Don Lemon. Tell us what you know about this.
So this magistrate judge, we've been hearing rumors that it was someone else, but now we're getting confirmation that it's Douglas Miko, and his wife works for Attorney General Keith Ellison and has anti-ICE posts. Now, of course, the very interesting thing here is Keith Ellison is the guy who immediately after this news broke on Sunday came out and said, oh, I don't think that the FACE Act applies because I don't think it is he said it is a stretch to say that the FACE Act could be used to protect churches, even though the clear text of the law in the FACE Act says it's protecting, yes, abortion clinics, but also protecting churches and other places of worship. So this is the Attorney General of Minnesota. You would think he would know better if he's the top law enforcement official in the state.
Right.
He's out there misrepresenting the law, carrying water for these people. And we're supposed to believe that this magistrate judge, who seems to be the reason why Don Lemon is not facing charges today.
To clarify, the charges that are being levied against this former NAACP leader, this other lady, the interesting individual that has protested all over the country, this William guy, these are conspiracy to defraud rights. Does that come from the FACE Act or the Ku Klux Klan Act? How does that work?
It comes from the Ku Klux Klan Act. So this law was implemented back in the early days after the Civil War when the Ku Klux Klan was depriving Black people of their rights under the 14th Amendment, and the prosecutors, the state and local prosecutors, weren't filing charges. So you had the Justice Department, you had Congress saying, look, the Justice Department has to prosecute these cases. And so this is also a classic case. I mean, if you want to, the comparison is absolutely crystal clear. You have the Attorney General of Minnesota saying, I don't think they did anything wrong. And the Justice Department now essentially has to step in. They're using a law that was created for this purpose to criminalize deprivation of rights. And this deprivation, this is deprivation of civil rights. The civil right to worship was clearly being abridged here by these people. And, we've seen this guy, DeWoke Farmer, William Kelly, he was unrepentant. When he heard the news that his fellow ringleader had been arrested, he recorded a specific video.
So, Pam Bondi, you want to come and arrest me? You want to come and give me charges? So be it. And for all the people giving me death threats, threatening my life, kill me. Go ahead, kill me. Because you know what? As Fred Hampton said, you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution.
Calling people to protest in the streets, saying we need to shut this country down. And, I think we should let that sink in. These people are not sane. They are very aggressive. They believe in what they're fighting for. They may be paid off, but they're also hardened agitators. And it is very important that the Justice Department is bringing these charges. It is very important to send the message. We will not put up with you interrupting church services, depriving people of their rights to worship God under the First Amendment in the name of your political agenda.
Tyler O'Neill, senior editor for us over at the Daily Signal. Thank you very much for keeping an eye on this story. We'll bring it back any updates that are sure to break. Thanks, man. All right, let's talk just a bit here about what some of the other fallout from this. I did get a clip sent in that I just appreciate. One of the ladies being arrested today. Here's that footage. Just, thought it might be something you would enjoy.
Lockup's in there. We'll bring her in. She's standing off to the side. I know this only because I just did it once.
Gotta pick the post lockup ride wedgie. Very important. So you can see two things. You can see that at the first glance, she does the smug look for the officer, because they think, I'm just going to, get off scot-free on this. After all, the magistrate in this case, this Miko individual, suggested the reason that he wasn't going to allow charges for Don Lemon is because he didn't feel the KKK Act applied here, which is very eerily, again, as Tyler pointed out, similar to what Keith Ellison had made the case for. And then you can see as she starts to be led away, though, some of the consequences do start to sink in. Looking a little nervous, kind of droops a bit there. I don't know. I just enjoy seeing those kinds of things. Now, there are other instances of the stupidity around the country that continues to make its way to the forefront. I do want to make sure that I get this one thing played. Vice President J.D. Vance, I think this is back in our segment 1 drive. Thank you very much. J.D. Vance, the vice president, did end up responding to the child arrest nonsense. I think it's worth playing here.
President Trump this week said that ICE has made some mistakes. I'm curious what steps the administration is taking to rectify those, and do you think your presence in Minneapolis today will calm the tensions there?
Well, certainly one of my goals is to calm the tensions, to talk to people, to try to understand what we can do better. When the president says that that mistakes have been made, my thought on that is that, well, of course there have been mistakes made, because...
And I believe later on he also mentions that the context of each story is relevant, really shouldn't be ignored.
Or Austin, Texas, or any other community virtually across the United States of America, and you don't see the same level of chaos in Minneapolis, the natural conclusion is that it's not what ICE is doing in Minneapolis, it's what Minneapolis authorities are doing to prevent ICE from doing their jobs.
We're getting ready to bring the radio crew back from commercial. I really do want to get that full portion of the Vance clip here up on the show, because how the leadership of this country, the administration specifically, responds to things in the next couple of months is going to matter quite seriously for the midterms. That said, got to bring the radio crew back one more time. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Again, one small clip here before we send the radio crew out for the evening. I wanted to share from Vice President Vance when he was prompted with, again, these ridiculous fake stories that have come out suggesting that children are being rounded up by the child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and they're being, shipped off to the mines or whatever it is that the current narrative is. His response is a very good reminder of how communications from a leadership position should be done. And I say that because I think that Kristi Noem could take a couple of notes here.
The fact that we're standing behind law enforcement, and I'm proud of the fact that we're enforcing the country's laws. But, you asked a question about this 5-year-old kid. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. We just left Toledo, Ohio this morning for an economic messaging event. And I see this story, and I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy. And I think to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well,
There you go. Right at the beginning, he makes it clear. Again, for those out there, maybe you're just a layman tuning into the Tony Kinnett cast, my personal favorite, and you might be hit with this kind of, well, did you see the headline of this? Aren't you mad? Or you're in the political sphere. You're in a particular office. I happen to know there's one Indiana congresswoman who watches very frequently, and her comms team asked me about this. When you get into these situations, how do you respond? Make it clear, first and foremost, I'm a father. Immediately, the question I have going into, and as I did, click on that Washington Post story, just like the vice president, whom I am not, by the way, despite very popular rumors. When he was asked, he said, look, I'm a dad. So I went and looked into the story. I was nervous. I'm like, gee, how could we do this?
A little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien. And then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they?
And to the freeze to death claim, by the way, according to the current forecast, it's -7 feels like -25 in the Twin Cities. Guys, that's chilly for a 5-year-old, wouldn't one say?
Not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America if the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated our laws because they have children, then every single parent is going to be completely given immunity from ever being the subject of law enforcement. That doesn't make any sense. No one.
Yet again, excellent point. I've called this the hostage problem. Whether you're talking about foreign policy and you're talking about Hamas, whether you're at home in the United States and you're talking about people who have committed a very serious offense, and then they go and they hide behind their children. They hide behind, they're like, well, we can't send SWAT in. We can't actually go in and solve the problem because they're hiding behind, women and children. The women and children might get hurt. That is not the fault of law enforcement. Of course, we do everything that we can to make sure that those who are either related or are women and children around active criminals, we make sure that we do everything that we can to keep those individuals safe. But if that individual jeopardizes the safety of women and children, he is still committing the crime and putting those around him at risk. This is why it is so crucial that local, state, and federal law enforcement work together. That when Florida and Texas work with ICE, you get less of these situations. And when you have Jacob Fry and Tim Walz and Keith Ellison encouraging and if not downright ordering people not to work with federal law enforcement, it puts women, children, and innocent people at risk and in danger actively.
No one thinks that makes any sense. Now, there are so many of these cases like that where if you just understand the context, there have been a number of situations that I've looked into personally where I say, wait a second, we don't want ICE arresting American citizens. They're supposed to be enforcing the immigration laws against illegal aliens. So then I look into it and I find out that the American citizen who was arrested took a swing at an ICE officer.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And we've heard this before. I talked about it at the beginning. You never heard anyone in the media or the left side of the aisle in the officials in Congress, for example, use the word American citizens. They just said Americans or civilians. Then, as soon as they had an instance in where ICE had arrested an American citizen, now they want to use the word citizen because everyone understands what's at play here. Well, then once it is finding out what Renee Good was doing, once it's finding out what a lot of these citizens have done, obstructing justice, acting like complete fools, idiots, and breaking laws in the process, well, then all of a sudden, you got to shift the narrative. Now we're on to children. And as we continue down this road, it is important that, first of all, that we maintain absolutely the importance of federal law, that we also maintain that it is those who are expecting the law to be upheld that have empathy. Making excuses for those violating the law because you saw a picture that made you uncomfy on TV is not a virtue. That is not empathetic. That is being guilted by the defense attorneys and activists of those who are perfectly comfortable seeing whether it's Minneapolis or Indianapolis or Annapolis become absolute hellholes. because, well, their suburban sensibilities suggest that, well, even though they would never host a migrant in their home, illegal, legal, otherwise, well, don't you know that you need to bear the burden? Tax everybody more. Give them a block of flats as they do in London, or housing complexes as we saw in Aurora. So that aside, I would like to remind everyone yet again, we've seen this exact thing play out in the fake story about the children. Remember the baby? We talked about this yesterday, who was supposedly tear gassed by federal agents, just to find out that the family, who had been given about $200,000 on GoFundMe, had not just been driving home from a basketball game when they were assaulted by ICE and tear gassed the child. They parked their vehicle, just like the guy today, abandoned their child in the car to then go and riot. All of these exemplary parents, like Mr. Maryland man, Kilma Abrego Garcia, who was such a wonderful, loving father. There are police reports from his wife of him endangering her children. Oh, just those are the illegal immigrants that you were told are just wonderful. They're just coming here to work on construction sites and just be a better, be a better country. Just coming here to find a better life. I don't feel bad for the individuals that ICE is arresting that have either violated the law. They had the opportunity to self-deport and they decided they were going to risk it. And you know what? If you go chips all in and then you lose every dime, I'm sorry, I don't feel bad. I didn't force you to pony up to the table and pay the ante. That was your choice. Radio crew, we're going to catch you guys later. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We're going to continue on the live stream. Got a little bit more, especially Brandon Gill. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be some good stuff. All right. I've now wished the radio side of the crew a very lovely good night. Jack Smith. You remember Jack Smith. Mr. Robert Mueller Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, who was going to save us all from the deprivations of Donald Trump, was going to do all of these charges that turned out to be garbage. And then, thanks to the efforts of guys like Chuck Grassley, whose sole mission in life is to ruin those who think they can hide secrets in government, released a little bit of information that showed, Jack Smith illegally subpoenaed the phone records of a bunch of senators on the Republican side of the aisle, and then forbade AT&T from telling them about it, which is a major violation of federal law. And it was Judge James Boasberg, the guy who, randomly gets assigned all of the important cases in Washington, D.C. regarding the Trump administration. He was the guy that approved them, also very illegal. So, they finally dragged him before Congress because, wouldn't you know it, a bunch of House representatives were also tracked and bugged, their records subpoenaed. And I hate congressional committees. I hate them. I hate everything about them. I hate that they're aired on C-SPAN, which you guys should know by now. I'm not a huge fan of C-SPAN. I despise that they have become a major opportunity for circus freak nonsense for people like, whether it's Jasmine Crockett or former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, or McIver, LaMonica McIver, to do their, you keep my name out your mouth, taking off the earrings and getting ready for a fight. I don't care for that. There was a little of that happened in this particular committee. Representative Brandon Gill, however, is the exception. He's been on the show, he's a friend of the show, fantastic young representative from Texas, one of the few congressmen who gives me hope for the institution. That's very, very difficult. Representative Brandon Johnson had one of the greatest moments in a congressional committee with Jack Smith, super duper prosecutor. And I think we have this particular clip ready to go. I want to make sure that we do, because Brandon Gill reduces, as Breitbart put it, who uploaded this clip from Fox News, reduces Jack Smith to a blubbering mess. Just behold and be blessed.
Yes, sir, we did. Yes, you did. And the subpoena covered the time period between November 2020 and January 2021. Is that right?
He's asking Jack Smith, you issued these subpoenas before, in this case, Representative Kevin McCarthy, who at the time was getting ready to come into the Speaker of the House at the time of the subpoenas. He wasn't the Speaker of the House yet. So you had this list of subpoenas. Rather interesting stuff. That's what he's clarifying going in here, because he's going to see whether Jack Smith will answer questions regarding when he issued very, very, very illegal phone taps.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you say that again?
We're not going to delay like this. The subpoena covered the time period between November of 2020 and January 2021. How many days after Kevin McCarthy was sworn in as Speaker did you subpoena his records?
I don't recall, but those two things had nothing to do with it.
It was 16 days after becoming the highest ranking Republican in the House of Representatives. You subpoenaed his toll records. Do you agree that that might reasonably be considered a violation of the speech or debate clause?
So, speech or debate clause. You are not allowed to politically prosecute, to just go after members of Congress because you don't like them. You are also not allowed to essentially take the records of senators, representatives, just because you want to. Especially, you're not allowed to tap their records without their knowledge. It also violates a lot of the certain precedents that are set forward for Congress. And he says, hey, look, Kevin McCarthy became Speaker of the House, and you all of the sudden decided, just like presto, I had an epiphany, that he needed to have his phone tapped. That seems, the average reasonable person might find that to be a little suspicious.
I do not, and I want to be clear that the toll records...
You were collecting months' worth of phone data on the Republican Speaker of the House, the leader of the opposition, right after he got sworn in as Speaker, all around the time of a major vote. That sounds like a flagrant violation of the speech or debate clause to me, and I think most people agree with me. And Speaker McCarthy had no recourse, did he? Because you issued a non-disclosure order ensuring that neither he nor any of the American people knew about these subpoenas. Is that right?
So again, Jack Smith required AT&T not to tell representatives and senators that their records were being kept and their phones were being tapped. That is highly illegal. And I mean highly, highly, highly illegal. You very much can't do that. Now, there are some comments that are already pointing out, well, if this is so illegal, Tony, you devilishly handsome host you, I may be paraphrasing a little bit at this point. Well, then why isn't Jack Smith being arrested and thrown away and put next to Diddy in federal prison? We'll get to that.
The toll record, the non-content toll record subpoenas, we did secure non-disclosure orders for those subpoenas.
You did. And let me ask you, Mr. Smith, at the time you secured those non-disclosure orders, was Speaker McCarthy a flight risk?
The non-disclosure order was based on concerns about...
Was Speaker McCarthy a flight risk?
He was not.
He was not. Then why did your non-disclosure order refer to him as a flight risk?
Uh-oh.
It says right here, the court finds reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in flight from prosecution.
Sir, when securing a non-disclosure order, the risks don't have to be associated.
You think that the Speaker of the House is a flight risk?
The question?
No, this is not your time.
So another representative from the left chimes in because this is a very bad in-the-corner moment for Jack Smith. It's like, are you going to let him finish? I'm sorry, are we really going to play that game? Are we going to pretend that Republicans and Democrats do not talk over witnesses brought to testify before the House and the Senate all the time? That's all they do? Because they want my job, to be honest with you, which is the ability to stop the person from talking, hit the pause button in OBS, and then say things. So, not his time, very against the Robert Rules of Order. I'm going to be honest, Comer should have thrown whichever Democrat that was out for that. That's ridiculous.
This is my time. You think the Speaker...
They did shut his microphone off after that, by the way. We'll back up and pick up.
No, this is not your time. This is my time. You think the Speaker of the House is a flight risk? You think he's going to hop on a plane and leave the country?
I do want to give credit to Hermetic Signal, who I think I've mentioned before as being very witty in the comment section. He said, well, when I said he was a flight risk, I thought he meant like, he was going to drink a flight of beers.
No, what I was trying to explain is with respect to a non-disclosure order, the risks aren't necessarily associated with the subscriber to the phone. There's the risks to the investigation.
I think that you were using, this was clearly in reference to Speaker McCarthy, and you were using clearly false information to secure a non-disclosure order to hide from Speaker McCarthy and from the American people the fact that you were spying on his toll records. But I've got more, so let's move on. In May of 2023, you also issued subpoenas for toll records of 9 U.S. senators and an additional representative. Is that right?
In May of 23, we did issue.
You did, and there were non-disclosure orders in conjunction with those subpoenas as well, right?
That's correct, consistent with department policy and the law.
So again,
I love how he says that. Consistent with department policy and the law. No, that's not consistent. That hasn't been done before. The reason we're making a big deal about this, the reason that we said that this makes Watergate look like jaywalking, is that there was a huge hullabaloo. At the beginning of the show, we showed the article from the Washington Post. The entire Washington Post reputation has been staked on for a long dang time. A long time on the idea that they were the ones who broke Watergate and the tapping of the DNC. Oh, yeah, I can't believe Nixon spied on people. Oh, the horror. Jack Smith did that originally it was times 8 U.S. senators. Now we add a bunch of representatives of the House of Representatives to the mix. It is far worse than Watergate could have been imagined to be. Forget the game that Republicans usually play. If this had been on the other foot, this is a situation, if it would have been on the other foot, you would have people like Nancy Pelosi renting her clothes, dressing up in burlap on the House floor. That's a horrible picture, but I'm sorry, it's necessary.
Nobody would know what you were doing. The senators would, and the representatives would, and the American people wouldn't know what you were doing. Is that right?
The toll records that we secured and the non-disclosure orders were consistent with policy and
you knew whenever you were doing that there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. Is that right?
The toll record subpoenas that we secured were with the concurrence of the public integrity.
Your own analysis says that you knew there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. I have it right here. This is an email from John Keller at Public Integrity Section to your team. As you are aware, quote, as you are aware, there is some litigation risk regarding whether compelled disclosure of toll records of a member's legislative calls violates the speech or debate clause in the DC Circuit. That's from your own analysis right there. So you did know, didn't you?
Sir, with respect to the item you just put up on the screen, the last sentence states...
we're going to get to the last sentence.
Okay.
We're going to get to the last sentence. And you cite case law in here, quote, the bar on compelled disclosure is absolute. Is that right? Or do you think that you didn't have to abide by that precedent?
To be clear, this statement is not from my office. This is the statement of public.
This is your justification for those subpoenas.
Look at him looking around very nervously. So there are a couple of comments, and we'll leave things here. You should really go check out the committee hearing. Brandon Gill does a phenomenal job. Might have him on the show here pretty soon. I don't want to make predictions. Whenever we're like, hey, we're having this guest on, they're like, oh, actually, my second cousin is flying in and something gets like bumped to the side or something like that. So we won't say we're going to have him on. We are currently chatting with his office to have him back on and get into some of this, because the question a lot of Americans have, you will notice that when I talk to a member from the Oversight Committee, whether it's Gill, whether it's Nancy Mace, whether it's James Comer, the question I ask consistently is, what are we going to get that is not just the strongly worded letter? There are a couple of cases right now in the House in which, like LaMonica McIver and Representative Sheila, whatever her name is, can't remember at the moment, in the weeds with all of that fraudulent mess, they are currently going through federal charges. So how this works is that if the House Oversight Committee, or in this particular case, the committee that interviewed Jack Smith, I believe the Oversight Committee, if they find that Jack Smith acted in illegal fashion, they suggest to the House, hey, this guy needs to be sent to the Department of Justice for prosecution. And violating the speech and debate clause, then it's the House of Representatives' job to vote for him to be sent to the department, to be referred to the DOJ for prosecution. And then the federal judges get involved. So what do you need to be doing right now? Who's listening to this? It's 8:09, a beautiful, snowy, frigid, maybe cold, whatever, damp Thursday evening. What does this mean for you? What this means for you is that as soon as the House Oversight Committee makes some kind of a motion that Congress needs to vote on sending this over to the Department of Justice, it is incumbent on you to call your representative. Primaries are coming up, boys and girls. and hold their private parts over the flames and make it a stink. I guarantee you, I live in Indiana 6th Congressional. I will be calling Jefferson Shreve and telling him, this may not be a big threat to him, who knows? If you do not, and I'm pretty sure he will, because he's been really good on these kind of votes so far. I'm that as a guy who didn't really want him to be elected. Jefferson Shreve, I'm going to say, you, sir, I want you specifically to make sure that you vote for this to be headed over to the DOJ for him to be prosecuted. Or in the case of representatives like Ilhan Omar, she should be censured, she should be removed, she should also be referenced over for prosecution. You need to vote affirmatively to that. To those who are down in Kentucky right now, Representative Thomas Massie has been voting a lot against his particular Republican Party. In other districts around the country, there are occasionally, whether they're representatives in the Republican side of the aisle from New York or California, or Democrats that are in purple districts who vote rather curiously on certain things. They're in primaries right now. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to vote in a primary because, first of all, that would violate some FCC regulations. It would also probably violate some nonprofit organization rules for the Daily Signal. And I'm not going to tell you how to vote. But I will say this. If you are frustrated with how a certain member of your House or Senate is voting, it's primary time, boys, girls, and squirrels, and it's a marathon. And one of the things that it is crucial for you to do is rally those around you. Make it a single issue vote. Absolutely. And don't play this, what if they don't really do anything? This other person I don't like. Indiana played that game where they're like, we don't want to be mean. Virginia and Maryland said they're not going to redistrict. And now here we are watching the Virginia redistricting case, which, by the way, right now is very up in the air because some are saying that it's totally fine. Some courts, that's not over yet. That's why we haven't covered it. Active participation in the Republic is crucial. Now, that aside, I do want to point out one final update on the Iranian situation. I'm not playing this on the air because, quite honestly, it turned my stomach. I don't have the heart to play it again on air right now. There is a voice message from Iran that is currently going around to one lady, Marzieh Amirzadeh, who is a Christian independent journalist from the Middle East. She has a voice message from Iran, says that the Islamic regime is currently putting wounded protesters into body bags as if they are dead. They reportedly can be heard moaning and suffering inside the bags. But the regime's, this is a quote, I'm reading the tweet. The regime's savage thugs do not unzip the bags to let people save them. You cannot even see such barbaric behaviors in horror movies. So that's just another update that I wanted to get to before we get to some of the mail time stuff this evening. Transparently, I'm scanning some of my notes because occasionally I'm aware that I don't have the opportunity to report everything that I wanted to get to during the show. Like, for example, this incredible clip of Jasmine Crockett apparently announcing she's a rootin' tootin' gun shooting girl. I tell you what, Jasmine Crockett there, she's got the big iron on her hip. Apparently, Jasmine Crockett, who wants guns banned, she's a gun owner now. Here she is down in Texas.
Listen, I'm a gun-toting Texan, right? So I
like that. Right off the bat, the code switching. So she brought out kind of like the St. Louis kind of language, and then she got kind of the kind of like that Georgian kind of accent, and then she brought it over to like a very weird, according to the producers over with like the Tyler Perry production, a black scent so terrible they wouldn't even use it for Medea. Now she's code switching to Texan, kind of.
A gun-toting Texan, right?
I'm a gun-toting Texan, right? I mean, right here. I tell you what, yeehaw! I just.
So I own firearms, I'm licensed to carry, and I also care about agriculture. Way before I was running for the United States Senate.
I have gone through every single one of her policy proposals. Never once, not once, has Jasmine Crockett in a House campaign or a Senate campaign now, so you know what that means.
Answer there, the Daily Double.
Never once has Jasmine Crockett talked at all about agriculture, unless there is one exception. That is when Jasmine Crockett says, and I quote, "We ain't gonna be back to picking no cotton." So, exciting stuff. I don't know if she knows this, but picking cotton is automated these days. Exciting stuff. So, Jasmine Crockett, gun-toting, farming girl, exciting. in the fur coat and hat like all farming, gun-toting individuals wear.
I served on the ag committee. I'm the girl who's actually lived in rural Texas.
That is wild, by the way, that she served on the ag committee, yet in her campaigns never referenced agriculture. That's fun.
I'm the girl that has actually driven farm equipment.
She's driven farm equipment, she says. Ah, yes, that's exciting. Wonderful. Sure. I also did want to play a clip before we get to some of the mail time. Michelle Obama is complaining again. Again, that is ironic in itself because Michelle has famously said over the last year that black women never complain. Black women never articulate their pain. That was Michelle Obama earlier last year. Here's that clip for reference.
We don't articulate as black women our pain because it's almost like nobody ever gave us permission to do that. And
so she's out here again, yet again, complaining and articulating her pain. She really does complain a lot publicly. Again, it's like, oh man, I've never experienced any privilege, said the First Lady of the United States. Now she's out complaining that the only reason people know who she is Barack Obama. Michelle, take it.
I was a dean of students. I was like, oh, you guys, all of that just disappeared in the course of this whole election. And you now see me as just Barack Obama's wife.
So that is typically how being a First Lady of the United States works. Even back to the Norm Macdonald stand-up when he'd talk about Bill and Hillary. Hillary was reduced to being the First Lady of the United States, despite her record, despite her work in the Senate. When you're the First Lady of the United States, you're the wife of the president. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I'm sure you were a great dean of students. I'm sure that you went ahead and did the old youth pastor, like sit on the back of the chair and just rapped with the kids, A great dean of students, Michelle Obama.
So that made me say, what, that quickly? My shoes become the most important thing about me, right?
I mean, yeah, you should probably talk to people in your party about that. You do realize that whenever there is a first lady or a president or whomever, anyone running for office really, that gets out there, the outfits that they are wearing are instantly criticized or praised all the time. The Met Gala, which is not actually about fashion, has become an event that is just where rich elitist leftists can dress very pretty and go strut around and talk about how they're going to spend your money someday. I don't know what to tell you. Guys, Salon is not a conservative magazine. Vogue, not historically conservative. Those are two publications that wrote quite a bit about Michelle's shoes.
Right. And again, not unique to me. It can happen to the best of us. So I shied away from fashion leading the conversation.
No comment?
But I knew I didn't completely control.
I lied. I am going to comment. That's a wild thing to say. I started shying away from fashion. Dressing like one of the movie theater workers in Drake and Josh. That's pretty wild. Dressing as though she's about to tell me that my coupon has expired at the local IGA. About to tell me that we're going to be short an alto in the Dixieland Jazz Band. Okay, I'm done.
So let's lean in.
Okay, let's not lean in. How about that? There's an article from The Atlantic of all places that is very dear to my heart. And the title is, "We Should All Know Less About Each Other." I very firmly agree with that. Wholeheartedly. We all should know quite a bit less about each other. So I'm going to be really dumb and answer some mail time questions to know a little more about y'all. So again, mail time, how this works on the show. Every show's got a viewer engagement segment because you should kind of check in with the audience. I do read the comments. I don't pay attention to like the rating system as much. Honest to goodness, you can look other prior episodes. You often will find the Daily Signals YouTube account like going through to comments and like replying, and if there's a little TK with it, that means it's for me. So I do want to get some of these. From yesterday, great question from Chuck Kurgan. And it was a $5 super chat as well that I didn't get to mention yesterday. And again, I'm sorry about that. Why has no one in the administration gone to the Supreme Court to get an answer to the constitutionality of sanctuary policies. This has to be done. The answer to that is it's not quite how it works. So if a city or a state declares, I'm a sanctuary city, legally that doesn't mean anything. At most, it can mean they are interpreting state and federal law for them under prosecutorial discretion, which is kind of the real bugaboo here. The rules for what they consider to be the application of state and federal law enforcement in their jurisdiction. So if they say, hey, if you come here, we're not going to arrest you, then that's a sanctuary city. It's not actually as though they're flipping a switch and going, pull the lever, Kronk. And then like, oh, we got it, Isma. Now we're a sanctuary city. Like that's not necessarily how that goes. Although I respect that. Dave 3156 says, is there now a Chinese military base in Canada? No, not yet. There is a particular military base off the coast of, I believe, I want to say off Canada's western coast. That there was some concerns about Chinese espionage a couple of years ago. But Mark Carney is very likely to give Chinese access to the infrastructure that governs a lot of Canadian military installations if they're not there already. So just to answer that question. Question from Demon Licio this evening, and a very, very nice $5 super chat again. You guys do not have to give us super chat money at all. He says, after the midterms, the electoral map is going to be so red, it's going to look like the stands of a Hoosier game. So, obviously, you know the way to my heart with the Hoosier reference there. I'm going to disagree. And the reason I'm going to disagree is not because I'm a doom and gloomer. I have a theory. I have a rule, actually, for elections. Going into the election year, the group of people who are the cockiest lose. Consistently, especially with midterms. And I think the reason, by the way, that a lot of midterm elections are lost for the party in power is because they come off of a big electoral victory and they get into this era of, well, we don't need to do anything. We can just sit back and relax. This is actually kind of an interesting thing with nonprofits. The worst budget year for nonprofit organizations, especially political ones, is the year after a presidential victory for like their political side. Oh, it's like the worst year. And the reason it's the worst year is because everyone goes, okay, the job's done. Everything's good now. Everything will be perfect forever. Remember after Trump's win in 24, everyone said, wow, Democrats are never going to win another election again. And then what happened? Well, Republicans got complacent. The same thing that Democrats have done consistently. So the rule to midterms that I have is don't be cocky. Treat every election as though you are 10 points behind but gaining. And right now, we see the left literally falling for this in real time. They're like, wow, the public isn't quite sure how they feel about ICE. We can do whatever we want. There's no rules. Like the old Little Caesars commercial, the guy starts to take off his shirt. Then he goes, put your shirt back on. He's like, okay, there's one rule. In the Democrats' case, right now, they're making the suggestion that they can simply lie about everything, like when they owned the media of old. Nope. Storming churches doesn't look good. Lying about children being arrested by ICE. It's not going to last. It won't. And we're already seeing that. Again, props to Speaker Johnson for getting through the funding packages, although I will say it's a bit of a shame that people like Ilhan Omar in the Progressive Caucus that was getting revved up even more so didn't get a chance to shut the government down over the Department of Homeland Security funding. Thought that might have been a really interesting end of January, but all of the minibus packages, for better or worse, have now made it through. There is an interesting series of investigations. Claudia, friend of the show, reached out over Indiana U.S. Senator Republican Todd Young and his treasurer Scott Shishman, and some possible finance shenanigans. I'm looking into that right now, but I want to be really careful before on the air I make any kind of allegations about political funding. So whether that's on the left, right, center, doesn't matter who it is, I try to be really careful because unlike, again, Cameron Kasky on CNN, I try not to get out there and say, here's what they did, why they did it, and they're evil and they're awful, and we should probably, string them up, tar and feathers. I try to be a little more careful on direct allegations because you're liable for that. So I'll keep an eye on it though, and I mean that we do when you guys send that kind of stuff in. So from RC0, a good question. Why do we have to get involved with the Middle East? Good question. Here's your answer. There's an economic answer. There's a pragmatic military answer. And then there is a common sense America first answer. So first of all, the economic answer. A lot of trade that relies on getting you what you want goes through ports in the Middle East. Whether we're talking about certain straits, we're talking about the Gulf of Aden, we're talking about things from Yemen all the way up to the Sinai Peninsula, a lot of trade happens right there that involves getting you and other Americans a lot of goods that you have a right to participate in on the international stage. You have a right to those goods. And the idea that some caliphate, some Islamic state somewhere can decide that you no longer have access to those because you are an American, and so theoretically, either Christian, agnostic, Jewish, or moderate Islamic, or the rest of the wonderful variety of diversity that makes up the country, et cetera, whatever, that you can therefore just be cut off? No, absolutely not. There's the pragmatic military answer, which is that we already have a presence in the region. We have allies that are in the region. It is in the military's best interest to have presences at various locations around the world because the United States is the global hegemon. There will be a global hegemon, period. There will be. There will be a leader. There will always be a big dog. When the big dog is a Western nation, times are good. When the big dog on the world stage is an Eastern power, things go very, very badly, very, very quickly. That has always been the way that it has been, always. We have lived under the auspices of Western control as the hegemony for a long time. Now, the problem is, how do you execute that? And this is where we get to the honest answer. The Iraq and Afghanistan, again, I'm assuming, the real reason you might ask that is that you don't want to get in an Iraq and Afghanistan style war. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You actually have to have a direction and a goal of going in and occupying and doing nation building in order to do the occupying and nation building. Great example, right now, Venezuela. The United States captured Maduro, humiliated the Venezuelan military. Cool. Not sending in a bunch of boots on the ground or plans to do so from what I have seen to rebuild a nation. Trump could have done that. He could have said, all right, Maria's now the new presidente, and we're going to send in Delta Force every day to make sure she stays in power. We could have done that. Doesn't work. The Nikki Haley, all the way from the George H.W. Bush to the George W. Bush kind of foreign policy, where he believed that everyone out there is real good shucksy doodles there. Their heart yearns for freedom. And you ignore cultures and think you can just reshape culture? No, wrong. That's an Old Testament principle, by the way. The idea you can just go in and just like, oh, all of a sudden we'll move in and everyone will love us forever. No, that's not a thing. So that's the pragmatic military answer, is that, yeah, sometimes you got to knock some heads and establish dominance. Iran doesn't have any authority or ability, or excuse me, doesn't have any authority or assumed ability, meaning a right to carry out obtaining nuclear weapons, which they've been trying to do, or to terrorize interests of the United States. That'd be reason number two. The common sense answer is that the United States can do whatever it wants. The best interest of Americans are Americans getting whatever it is that they want. And if that is toppling a dictator with a missile, yeah, that's good. Well, what about sovereignty and international right? No. Americans are a manifest destiny people. And if we, as the people, believe that your country is awful and it has a dictator and that you continuing to exist sucks, if we want to throw a couple of Lockheed Martin or Raytheon specials into your crap hole country and remove Al-Khamenei and get Persia back, or at least something better than Al-Khamenei, good, fine. I'm okay with that. What we have found is that when we let things fester, guess what? Festering wounds turn into diseased infections that cause a lot of problems. Cuba, Venezuela, the Latin American cartels, that kind of an issue. Now, again, none of that requires nation building or the spending of long-term American blood and treasure. So, again, as one of the comments points out, international law is not real. Correct. Number two, some cultures are better than others. Another comment, also correct. And number three, by the way, just in my own heart of hearts, it's okay for the United States to have allies, and it's good for our troops to get combat and active experience in some things. Not a bad thing. I'm very Teddy Rooseveltian in foreign policy, and America's oldest tradition is sinking Muslim pirates. So that's it. Moving on to kind of the next thing. Well, I can't without dunking on Tucker. Tucker saying that Iran should have a nuke because they'd probably use it justly is retarded. But I mean, all of his takes these days are pretty retarded. So that's kind of low-hanging fruit. Next question is from Rocks and Cows, Minnesota. A $5 super chat. Very kind of you. You can ask questions for mail time without spending money, just so you know. Was Sel Nakima Wakanda's booked in male or female? Oh, Nakima Armstrong. Was she male or female? She's got a huge Adam's apple and 5 o'clock shadow. Not convinced. Not buying a word from those people ever again. She looks to be a gal. I'm not getting the vibe. I will say the Trump administration put out like an AI edit of her face, like crying, like the one illegal immigrant drug dealer that was arrested and was like crying and weeping. They made stuff out of. I don't think that's necessarily good policy. I haven't seen the Adam's apple you're describing. Then again, I wasn't really doing the full analysis on that one. So who's to say? Next, Mountain groans. So what happens the next time they, as in BLM, NAACP, storm a church service and it isn't so peaceful for them? My church protects its congregants. This is why I am so intent on encouraging y'all to have church or synagogue security teams. You need to have them. You need to have them. I also recommend that you carry. I do. And carry responsibly. One of the things that's being argued right now is that places in states like Hawaii do not have the right to tell you that you cannot carry a firearm on private property, and then essentially suggest that any place that's private property that could be accessible to the public, it's you by nature, you cannot carry there unless the owner gives you explicit permission. That's ridiculous. So do I think that what would happen if this happens again? It depends on the jurisdiction. I mean, if there's a group that approaches a church and trespasses, the local law enforcement agency should intervene. There is part of this that is on the people of Minnesota to throw out those who are failing to uphold the law here. Then, again, the issue that we have in this country is that there's a large amount of people who just don't want to touch politics. They don't want anything to do with it because they don't have to. That's killing the republic. You have an investment. You have a requirement and actually an obligation as a citizen by definition to be invested in the continual care of one's government. From Homie in Montana. Nice. Tony, can they find another way to arrest Don Lemon, or are we precluded because the corrupt judge said no? Here in the United States, there is always another way. And I do believe you haven't heard the end of this one. I know that Pam Bondi is really upset. And I do believe that he will probably be brought up on charges of some sort somewhere. Right now, what's holding a lot of things up is this blue slip nonsense that essentially if there's a federal judge that gets out there and the Democrats from that state say, oh, we don't really want them here, then a prosecutor or a judge can be told, no, sorry, you can't be appointed here because there are like little vetoes and things. That's also being hashed out at the congressional level. I'm not quite satisfied. There's a really interesting fight going on right now between Senator Mike Lee of Utah and Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa on a couple of different things in federal law. I don't know how that's going to go yet. I might try to cover that a little bit more later on in an episode. Sorry, folks. I know it's a longer mail time. That's my bad. I've let them stack up. Tony, what do you... this is from Deneen, and ask what I think about Brett Cooper's recent comments on Nick Fuentes. So Brett Cooper used to be over at the Daily Wire, kind of a zillennial Gen Z who made a lot of her brand about like reading the comment section. Just another, kind of conservative analysis caster. Since she has left, she's gone through some changes. I do have one video recently of her doing some kind of silly nonsense. Here it is.
Everyone off, but I do have to say, like in thinking about this whole weekend, pondering it after I consumed this content for all of you guys, it seems like Sneeko and Fuentes like actually have aura. If I'm going to use that Gen Alpha, Gen Z, I don't even know what kind of term it is. Like it or not, there is a sense of self-assuredness and confidence with the two of them. Like,
okay. So the case that Brett is making, and a lot of kind of small, and when I say small, I mean small impact, like right-wing-ish influencers have, and that's what I would consider Brett. Two things. First and foremost, just consuming news and media content is not enough to do any kind of research and preparation for anything. I've said this before, that when you get into broadcasting of any kind, whether it's influencing on social media or whether it's in front of a camera, live stream, radio, TV, whatever, after about the second day you do it, you realize you've kind of said everything in casual conversation politically that you ever have growing up that's like relevant to the day. And so you have a choice to make. And you have two choices. And I've seen this. Even on my home station in WIBC, I've seen different hosts go in different ways to their detriment. Some of them will sit down and they'll read. They'll read things. They'll read interesting things. They'll actually expand what they know about things. They'll learn more. I used to say that foreign policy wasn't something that I ventured to. And then I read a ton about foreign policy and a lot on international history and spent a lot of time learning about it so that I could talk about it and not sound stupid, hopefully. Whereas some other influencers and content creators have instead just set their phones to doom scrolling, and they just scroll the social media feed again and again and again and again and again. And then they just regurgitate. That's what happened to Brett Cooper and Candace, for that matter, and a lot of individuals like that, where they have just coughed up whatever they've been served. And that's how you get this brilliant analysis. They're just like so self-assured and like confident. There's also 30 jump cuts because she can't speak extemporaneously without needing to edit her videos, apparently. The core takeaway from all of this, in order to do anything effectively, because there's natural broadcasting and speaking talent, you do need to expand your knowledge on things that are substantive. Reading posts from megachurch pastors will never, ever, ever substitute reading scripture and studying it yourself. You can talk with Bill Nye about his goofball experiments all you want that he did on for the Bill Nye Science Show. Or you could actually get in and read about some of those subjects yourself. Investment, diving into the specifics of subjects is how you grow. It's how you learn. And yeah, there's a little bit of former teacher that's, creeping through on that for me, but, just little something on that line. So that all said, I think one more mail time question, and we'll probably call it an evening. From Tuesday Statesor. Why does SCOTUS have to get involved on whether or not tariffs are illegal or not, since other presidents have used them? That's a good question. Why does SCOTUS have to get involved? First of all, because there is a series of lawsuits. There are a series of lawsuits in which the president has used tariffs differently than other presidents have used them. There are two ways that the president of the United States can levy a tariff, according to law. Number one, he can levy a tariff by signing into law a tariff that Congress has passed as a part of the budget, because Congress holds the purse. So they decide financial policy. So Congress sends it over in kind of 50s onward. Then the State Department would give it a final look over, and you would probably bring in some members of both houses of Congress and say, okay, here's the actual security situation, top secret. Here's what we know everywhere. Ask not what your budget can do for you, but what you can know about the communist war, and that kind of a thing. Then the president would sign it. The other way the president can assign tariffs is due to a national emergency. I hate national emergencies. I think if there were two things that I despise about the current system of government, barring my idea of franchise and what a citizen should be, another topic for another time. The two biggest things I have an issue with. Number one, we've already talked about prosecutorial discretion. The idea that an executive can go, I don't want to enforce it like that, and then just not do it and face no consequences. That's awful. Number two, I despise national emergencies. The idea that an executive can just waltz in, any executive, left, right, center, populist, nationalist, traditionalist, Episcopalian, whatever, can stroll in and say, national emergency, I declare we're banning salt. No. Every single republic in the history of this planet has fallen because they had an executive who decided, oh, wait, the legislature's not working anymore, and I don't really have any constitutional authority to do what I'm doing, so I declare national emergency. Guys, France has lost like 4 different governments to that alone. 4 different governments in France have fallen. It's like, I declare that I am in control. There's an emergency. Sometimes there are emergencies. That's the problem. You do need an executive. If the United States is being attacked, assaulted, an invasion right now, you don't have time for Congress to sit down and issue committee-style action. So the president says, I declare a national emergency. We're going to do this, and this, like the National Defense Authorization Act, which can nationalize certain U.S. industries in a time of immediate war. So the president can say, all right, all of the oil now is being rationed because we're being invaded right now. We need, the army runs on its stomach, which means on the fuel and the logistics it takes to manage the troops. So I'm declaring rations right now until this crisis ends. That's useful. State governors, they declare state emergencies all the time. You guys are seeing this in various states, right? Oh, the National Guard is going to be able to go out here and direct traffic. You, who normally are allowed to get in your car and drive wherever you want at any given time, you might be told, hey, pal, you stay off of I-94. No one on I-94. There's a lot of snow over there, snow plow, some ugly fat guy on a unicycle. You stay off I-94. They have the right to do that if there's a state emergency declared. National emergencies, though, for tariffs, that's a problem. Because who decides what a national emergency is? The president declaring, I don't like trade deficits, that's not a national emergency. Sorry, it's not. Even if I like the outcome of the tariffs. Even if a lot of people like the outcome of the tariffs. That's populism, by the way. Well, a lot of people like it. That should be the law. No, that's French Revolutionary crap. I don't really like the king. I don't think he should have his head. Yeah, let's get Robespierre and cut his head off until everyone decided they didn't like Robespierre, and then they cut his head off. Populism in that manner kind of sucks to political philosophy. I know we're going on a little while tonight, but this is important. It's fun. I have the energy. Why not for a few more minutes? Here's where things get a little itchy with the president and the Supreme Court. So they've issued the lawsuit. They have to address it. The president has thrown out a lot of tariffs, and they've gone into effect. He's declared national emergency on things like that do probably have some national security, national emergency things like steel, automotive manufacturing, maybe. I think the Solicitor General might actually have to make a case for why Honda, like tariffs can be set up in regard or relevance to Honda. Like, are we going to use Honda factories to turn out tanks or APCs? And I say that, by the way, knowing that Indiana produces like the majority of this nation's Humvees, in case you didn't know. Huge defense contracting industry in Indiana. Ask Senator Jim Banks about it sometime. My goodness, he'll tell you all about it. But in regard to the president tariffing like bananas, what's the national security or emergency thing there? So the Supreme Court's likely to strike it down. And again, the other presidents have used them. Sure, they have to a minor degree, but President Trump went all the way in. Trump has a very unique ability to take things that other presidents, like, it's best to not interfere. It's kind of small, just let it go, which is also a part of the Republic, exception governance. President Trump is like, we're going to go all in right now. Tariffs, my favorite word, tariffs for everyone. Well, once they became huge standard policy, and it's like, wait a minute, Congress doesn't control the purse anymore. And one of the questions that's been asked in SCOTUS is, if AOC comes in, she's the next president, she beats Vance somehow, and AOC is the president. Does AOC get to declare a national emergency because of climate change? National emergency. She's decided national emergency. President gets to decide national emergencies. And therefore, anything coming into this country that is unfriendly to fossil fuels, 500% tariff. Does the Supreme Court have a right to intervene? Why? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And as far as tariffs are concerned, again, whether you or I like it or not, the real argument at play here is a real question that in the modern information age, Americans are probably going to have to wrestle with, and I don't know the answer on this one. How does Congress argue foreign policy leverage and diplomacy without giving away the game? So tariffs uses a negotiation tactic. Excellent example of this. Trump's like, all right, anyone who supports Iran is also getting a tariff. A secondary tariff for you. Okay, well, that's a good thing. Could Congress negotiate that and Iran not know exactly how far the U.S. was or wasn't bluffing? No, because the internet, they would know immediately. So there probably needs to be a reinterpretation or a new piece of legislation, or my God, even maybe a constitutional amendment that redefines the powers of the president regarding negotiation. Because USAID was not unconstitutional. It was a presidential bribery account meant to be used independently of Congress to fight the Soviet Union by bribing other countries to work with us instead of the Soviets. The problem was that the lesbians got a hold of it and started making it transgender theater time for Columbia. So, I know a long-winded Tony Kinnett cast this evening, but alas, hey, good fun times. So that said, we'll be back tomorrow. I've got a couple of interviews to upload that we haven't gotten to as well. There is now on dailysignal.com, I don't know if it's /careers. I'm going to have to find out the link for that, but we are looking for another producer for the show. So I would very, very highly recommend considering being a producer over here for the Tony Kinnett cast. We need somebody to help us edit some of these interviews. Got a great one with Stephen Kent, with Alvin Louie as well lined up. Those will go up on YouTube and Rumble. Thank you very much for tuning in. A little bit on this before we head out for the evening.
Since the founding of America 250 years ago, many things have changed. The homes in which we live, the clothes we wear, the jobs we hold, the conveniences we enjoy. But some things never change. The commitment of husband and wife, the importance of passing along our values to our children, the rewards of service to community and country, the faithfulness of God. Some wonder how America has thrived for so long and how we can ensure she continues to. As long as we keep first things first, we've only just begun. America, the beautiful.